Hi, I'm Ross Taylor, your host and guide for Sacred Sundays, a space to slow down, tune in, and return to what's sacred within and around you. I'm also a life coach who supports empaths and sensitive souls, guiding them on the journey back to self-acceptance and inner alignment. My passion is connecting with like-minded souls, and these conversations are part of fulfilling my purpose and serve to deepen our collective exploration of what it means to live in connection with the sacred. Some weeks you'll hear a sound-based offering to open the space, other times we'll simply begin in conversation. However it unfolds, this is an invitation into presence, connection, and the beauty of the unseen. If you enjoy these conversations, please subscribe, rate, and share so others can find their way here. So pour a cup of tea, settle in, and let's begin. I'm happy to welcome Claire Bonin to the Sacred Sundays podcast. Claire is a clinical herbalist and witch based in Nanaimo, BC. She has been working with herbs since 2015, graduating with her Community Herbalist Certificate and Diploma of Phytotherapy from Pacific Rim College in 2019. Through each adventure and misadventure life has presented since then, there has always been a herb friend patiently waiting to guide her back home to herself. This love affair with plants is the backbone upon which she has built a following of over 95,000 witches on TikTok, and her craving for connection, depth, and long-form love notes to plant friends is the perennial joy driving the offerings she shares with students and patients alike. So happy to welcome you to the podcast, Claire.
To be with you, Ross. Thank you.
So Claire is going to begin by sharing a guided meditation with us, and so I'll hand it over to you, Claire.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. So, wherever you find yourself today, just take a moment here and really find yourself in space. Kind of let whatever momentum you've had in your day settle into your body. And if you're doing something with your hands, let them come to stillness. And find yourself in a seated position where you can really be alert, but also at rest. Here at the beginning, I'm going to invite you to take a couple of deep breaths. So inhale through the nose and sigh through the mouth. One more time. And I'll ask you to begin by bringing your attention to your heart space here. And just very gently making note of any tension that you have in your body. And at this point, we're not trying to do anything with this tension at all. We're simply noticing, being really present with ourselves. If you lose that presence, just come back to breath. Just let yourself breathe in and breathe out. Now, here at the beginning as well, I'd like you to bring to mind someone with whom you have an uncomplicated loving relationship. This could be a parent, a grandparent, a lover, a pet, the divine, whoever it is, as long as it's someone who sees you for all your virtues and your flaws and loves you unconditionally. Just invite you to bring that awareness into your heart space. And as you do, kind of notice what happens in your body. Notice if there's any softening around your heart space. Maybe a little bit of tension gets released through your neck and shoulders. And really let yourself be seen by this presence. Now, I'm going to ask you to bring to mind something in your life that has a bit of an edge for you. So this could be something that is a cause for frustration for you at the moment, or maybe has some sadness attached to it, or maybe somewhere where you feel stuck in your life.
Now I really like this. But yeah, I just found the antlers.
As you bring this situation to mind, I'm going to just ask that you notice how your body responds to the stimulus.
I know it didn't plan.
There's a little bit of tension, maybe, or an internal gripping. And again, we're not trying to do anything with that. We're just noticing.
No, I didn't get There's 130.
Now, I want you to call back to the being who you invited into your heart space at the beginning of this meditation. And with them in the room, what would they say to you when it comes to dealing with this situation? This entity who loves you so much, what would they say to you now?
Of course.
And all we're doing here is listening. Just feeling a moment of grace.
Saying you couldn't bring it because she's in love with forever. For her just being scared. It's not right. You said this forever.
Now thank that being that you've invited into your space for their insight and send the situation, just set it to the side, just for a moment. You can just have a moment of gratitude and soak in that sweet love, that sweet, uncomplicated love.
Thanks, Mayor.
And know that you can come back to this space at any time, whenever you need it.
Oh, yeah. I've been fine now.
Now, in a moment, I'm going to invite you to come back to the room, wherever you are. And before you do, just take a nice deep inhale through the nose and gently sigh through the mouth.
Yeah, it's great.
Might feel good. Just bring some gentle movement to your fingers and toes. Might feel really nice to place one hand at the back of your skull, just at the base of your neck, and one over your eyes, and just take a deep breath here too. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back to the room wherever you are.
Beautiful meditation. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a juicy one.
It is. I like the contrast of those two experiences and holding them in that way.
It's really a big part of my work to track the sensations in the body. And that's one meditation that I feel like is so subtle in that way, but always brings me right back to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Claire, I just wanted to ask you to start off with, I'm just blown away. 95,000 witches on TikTok. I feel like that is significant in so many ways. I think it speaks to the work that you do and your presence. But wow, I mean, just to think of the reclaiming that goes along with that 95,000 witches, considering the ancestral history that goes along with that. So I'd love to hear what you want to say about that journey of creating that following. I'm imagining that that wasn't your intention, that you're just being yourself and attracting all of these followers. So what would you like to share with the listeners about that journey?
That's a really kind question to start with, first of all. Thank you. And you were right. Gosh, TikTok is a really strange zone to play in. I think one of the things that was really interesting and surprising to me when I started to have a journey of like periodically going quite viral on TikTok was that people were connecting to things that I was really surprised that they would find interesting, quite frankly, because I would
Mm.
just turn on the camera and be really like excited to share about sort of the intersections of, herbs and magic and teaching herbs and kind of thinking about herbs in the ways that I really had craved learning about them more in school and then discovering like, whoa, people really like are kind of craving this level of, I think you used the word reclamation, which is very apt because I think there's something about herbalism that a lot of people are attracted to because we're tired of talking about things and we're looking for an inroad to a more like body-based practice. And it felt really good to connect with people that way.
So just really organic.
Purely.
It's amazing. And I've never been on TikTok, so I don't really know what you might be referring to, but I think there's remnants of it on Instagram for sure in terms of the reels and the way that that's showed up on Instagram. So I'm assuming there's some similarities there.
There can be. I haven't had any success, to be honest with you, on Instagram. It seems to be there seems to be like a different sort of politic, if you will, on Instagram.
Mm.
There's a lot more polish that's required of people. And if you've met me in sort of the wild, I curse like a sailor. Like I like wearing ripped jeans. I like, there's something about not being as curated that I think works really well on a separate platform, which is great because that's also,
Mhm.
yeah, who has time for that? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's also a refreshing perspective to be that way. I'm surrounded by several people who would say the same thing you do. Like, swear like a sailor, and there's something about that that is just really refreshing. So I can see that that's a part of it. And I met you I think probably a month ago at an event in Nanaimo, and I haven't seen a lot of your Instagram. What I have seen, there's a lot of beauty and a lot of depth, and it's very clear, like in human design you're a projector, and it comes across. I mean, what you're doing and the way you do it is very magnetic, and that is the hallmark of a projector in alignment, right?
Thank you for that. Yeah. It is really like learning that I was a projector was pretty mind blowing because I definitely found like, I don't know, there's something about the journey of like being really shocked that the things that make you who you are or are
Hmm.
really exciting and life giving to you is like, I don't know how to say this without sounding a little bit crazy, but like there's sometimes I think a bit of like narcissism that we get and we're like,
Mm,
oh, this is like my thing. And then you share it with
right.
people and it's like, oh no, I'm one of like many. Everyone loves this. This is insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the things I encounter in some of the groups that I do whenever we sit in circle. And I think you and I actually might have talked about this at the gathering we were at. It's like there's always someone who needs to hear what someone else says or someone else that's going through that experience. And so we can easily judge what we're about to say or what we're going to share, but really there's a collective energy that is desiring that exact thing,
Yeah.
right?
It's so real.
Hmm. So what would you say to someone who is like herbalist, don't know what that is? Like, where would you begin that conversation if someone was listening and wanted to learn about this for the first time?
I like that question a lot. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
It's a it's a really interesting practice. I think there's sort of two answers. There's the textbook answer and then there's like the what I actually tell people. The textbook answer is there's kind of two inroads into herbal medicine. My training was really classical, so I have a lot of Western medical science backing what I do in the body.
Hmm.
And then there's also a huge lineage of folk tradition when it comes to the practice of herbal medicine that's really at its heart very land based and very about learning how to understand the rhythms of the land and the way that those rhythms also show up in our own bodies and our physiologies and our mental and emotional landscapes. The way that I practice herbalism, because there's no two herbalists that practice the same way, is really about learning how to speak those languages and be present with someone and sense and hear and listen to what their emotional patterns are and act as a matchmaker between a herb that would really, really balance whatever symptom or disharmony that they're coming to you for help with. And I will say that there's a right herb for everyone. Sometimes it's really, really hard to locate which herb it is if you don't really know what you're looking for. Herbs are really, really complex.
Okay. And how does herbalism differ from Chinese medicine? Or is there a crossover?
It's a good question. Totally. So Chinese medicine is, first of all, it's like my favorite diagnostic system that I've learned. And it's ancient. Oh, it's so, there's this richness to it. But Chinese medicine has a whole language that involves learning like meridians, and they have 5-element theory. And there's a way that the organ system in Chinese medicine doesn't necessarily translate to the way that we talk about the organs in Western medical sciences. So herbalism is a little bit different in that the way that we formulate herbs is really different. In Chinese medicine, they tend to have a fairly set formulations for different things. And like one formula will do like 15 different things, and they're really powerful and really do what they say they're going to do. But the way that a lot of Western herbalists will practice is that we will formulate based on the person in front of us. So no two formulas look the same. And there's a lot of flexibility with that. Some herbalists will only prescribe one herb at a time. Some will do formulas with like 15 herbs in them. And it's a little bit different in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in what you described before, you kind of alluded to a shamanic element, like a shamanic kind of connection to the earth and the patterns of nature that we're perhaps living contrary to. And so I imagine that some of the people that show up in front of you are actually having that experience. They're living out of alignment with the energies around us. And by drawing on the herbs, you're actually bringing alignment back through nature as a solution. Is that accurate?
I would say that that's a really big part of it for sure.
Yeah.
I like to teach seasonal workshops just in that exact spirit and sort of like, okay, well, we're in the fall, which I find myself reaching for these herbs, and maybe it would be nice for people to know. It's like we're really taught to kind of distrust the rhythm of our body. I think when it comes into like the dark of winter, when we're supposed to be hibernating and like getting into more yin-y states, or even like the fall is associated with grief and the lungs. And like that is like such an unpopular emotion culturally. Like it's so taboo. So we stay busy, we stay hyped as a way to avoid going into those places. And that unfortunately does make those patterns go deeper, and that causes more illness in the long run. But it is really interesting, like cyclically, the things that I find people, even like sitting across the table from people, like the emotional patterns that will come up seasonally, like it is like clockwork. And it's really just kind of like, oh, isn't that interesting?
I think the reason I asked the question was because just last week I did a talk on that very thing of aligning with the seasons and how we get out of alignment. Like this is a time of slowing down and going within and withdrawing our energy from everything. And yet everything is ramping up. We've got Halloween and Thanksgiving and then Christmas. And it's like, it's go, 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 go. And so it's interesting because I think one of the participants in that conversation made the comment about her own inner cycle and how that is a reflection of the seasons as well. And I wondered how that played into the work that you do. And I think you're answering that question quite nicely. Is there anything you want to add to what you said, though?
The thing that comes to mind when we're sort of like speaking about the cyclical nature of the universe and of life is that life is a circle. And I think a lot of the times when we have things happen in our lives, like traumas or like really difficult seasons, we often forget that like we will have a chance to revisit it at some point, and we will have a lot of tools that we're going to accumulate until that time comes again, and that we are so much more equipped to handle our lives than I think we are. And I think a lot of the times, like the spiritual aspect of herbalism is really interesting because like whenever I'm intuitively reaching for a plant, like, let me think if I can think of a good example. Like today I was reaching for elderflower, which is like such a huge ally for me. Like she's so beautiful. And it really was interesting when I was pausing. I'm thinking, okay, why am I attracted to elder today? I was like, okay, well, this is an antiviral plant who also like has a bit of like a settling effect on like really spicy emotions, which is like kind of perfect for this time of year. It's to help go down and in. But sometimes we reach for things without necessarily realizing why we are. And I think learning how to trust that impulse again is like a really, really important aspect of trusting the body again. And also knowing that like we're just animals, you know, like we're having this crazy experience. Life is a circle. You already know what you need to do, whether or not you've trusted that intuitive ping and like gone towards it or not.
Yeah. And you're pointing to something that I think I've said it a few times over the course of doing this podcast, and it's worthy to say again in this context, is 70% of the population in human design is a generator type, and they've got the energy to keep going and moving. And one of the things I say to myself, especially, and every generator I encounter, is that we have to go slow to go fast. And so part of the slowing down and part of really, hitting the brakes is listening to our internal cues and connecting internally in a way that we may not have before. And so I feel like what you're saying, it's like when we slow down enough, we can actually tune into what our body wants and needs and find the answer that we otherwise wouldn't be able to see. And I'm guessing that through the work you're doing and through the herbs that you're sharing, that's helping people to do just that.
Absolutely. And it's really cool the colloquial, when I sit with someone and it's a really interesting experiment because I am an introvert at heart. Like I really am much better at listening than I am at talking. And you can kind of read in people's body languages the way that they are just needing to be given the space to really find their own answer about things.
Yeah.
At the beginning, when I started with that meditation of where do you feel this tension in your body, like that question is gold when it comes to tuning back into those cycles. Like tension in the body has so much information to give us about like what sort of resistance we have in our lives versus where we're finding flow. We live in really intelligent things, these bodies of ours.
Oh, yeah. And when we're living through the mind, that is the opposite. Like when we're thinking our way through everything and retelling stories, we're just bypassing all of the wisdom that is literally below our neck. And I notice that a lot when I'm working with clients, and I will say that a lot. It's like, okay, wait, stop right now. What are you noticing in your body? Where are you having sensations? And I would say almost 100% of the time, people are able to like really reflect that back fairly quickly, but they have to stop and drop down into that. And usually there's some tremendous wisdom that comes from that sensation. And like you said, the secular nature of things, it's like there is a connection to the past with that feeling, because I'll often ask the next question, which is, when do you first remember feeling that feeling? Like how long, what's the origin of it? What's the history and how far back does it go? And it's like, it's usually somewhere between 5 and 7 years old. And it's fascinating, the wisdom that exists. And so I really love any modality that brings that level of slowness and bypasses our mind and gets us into our body in a supportive way. And again, that comes back to the work that you're doing as well.
I love that you kind of brought it back to that spirit of like, if we are not living in the present moment, that there's a lot of room for those narratives to eclipse reality in a lot of ways. And it's interesting. I'm in the middle of this book right now called Flourishing Kin by this woman named Yuria Selidwen, I think her last name is. And anyways, she talks about how contemplative practices have been sort of co-opted in the West to make us better worker bees,
Right.
rather than honoring like the indigenous way of doing a contemplative practice would have been to really like develop that relationship with the land. And through developing that relationship, we create ethics that make us more protective of the land, but also more protective of like, there's only one me in this moment who's experiencing this moment. Like I never get to experience this again. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing to return to.
Yeah, it really is. And it's something that, you said something that really made me wonder. It made me think about going back to what we talked about at the beginning, which is the question around the witches, right? It's like, I just have this belief that this is something that was intuitively known and systematically suppressed because of the wisdom that was contained in these teachings and these knowings. And so I wonder, the rise of the feminine, the rise of the witches, it's like, to me, it's nothing but a good sign, because it means that all of these teachings that are so beneficial and these ways of being that are so important are returning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an interesting, like, my temperature check on sort of the culture of that has really shifted just from being in the realm for so many years. Like 2011, everyone and their dog wanted to be a witch. Like, it was
Right.
just very, very trendy. And the idea of opening the door to that suddenly became available. And I think
Hmm.
that that's so wonderful. We need more people who are um, doing the dance,
Right.
if you will. And also, I think we're about to see another change in that realm. I think that there's a craving for more depth and autonomy that I'm seeing in people that
Mm.
I'm working with when it comes to like spiritual practices or feeling to some level. People want to know that there's a lot of integrity behind what they're adopting, and the aesthetic is kind of not cutting it anymore. And
Hmm.
I think that's part of why I've come in and out of a lot of different modalities in my 15 years in the spiritual realm. And I always come back to herbalism because it's like the thing that I've put the most time to learn into. It feels like because it isn't easily commodified in a way, I
Mm.
really keep returning to it. It's not like capitalism has been able to package it up and sell it en masse. It's like, no, it's a very slow sort of form of being.
Hmm. I love that. And it makes me think, what are the most common reasons that people show up asking for your services and your support? What would you say are the things that you see the most in terms of, I don't know if they're symptoms or ways of being? Perhaps you could speak to that.
Yeah, totally. So symptom wise, like nervous system support, people I think are a lot of the times having been failed by the medical system is a really big thing for a lot of people too. Kind
Hmm.
of it's a last ditch effort, Hail
Right.
Mary, if you will. And also a lot of people who are seeking a lot more autonomy over their bodies
Hmm.
tend to seek out herbal medicine. I think too, there's a level of seeking sort of like what you're saying, that remembrance of self, that if you've no longer, I'm a bit of a rebel at heart, if you will, Saturn in Aquarius. So I find that when people sort of realize, oh, the rules aren't real, I may as well be weird and figure out what actually works for me outside of those confines. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I'm curious though about, like you mentioned, the autonomies. I guess I'm always coming from the place of like, if there's somebody listening who knows nothing, it's like, how can we frame all of this for them? And what does it mean to come back to the autonomy in your body? Like, I find that fascinating as well. Again, because I feel like we're literally moving through the world, a lot of us, just from our head up, right? We're so mentally focused and mentally driven and results oriented, and we've been trained to be that way. And so when I hear you say autonomy of your body, it's like, well, there's more to that. I know that because of my own journey.
Totally. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, it's this really interesting relationship that we have with the medical system, I think, in our culture where like
Mm.
I want to be really, really clear that modern medicine is unbelievably powerful
Hmm.
and there are so many things that I just cannot do. Like, please don't come to me for surgery. Like, that's just not my purview, right?
Right.
And at the same time, because we have these incredible minds in doctors, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on doctors, and they don't always have the time or the tools to really meet people where they're at. And we kind of deify them,
Hmm.
which is really depersonalizing to the doctors and really unfair to the patients as well. So I think what happens is people start to realize that in order to become a version of well that feels better to them, that they might have to get a bit more creative. And then the other part of that is also that herbalism is folk medicine. So a lot of its roots would have been in people who don't have tremendous amounts of income or wealth at their disposal and would really need to know what would be safe to harvest and grow your own medicine, grow your own food as a way to maintain your well-being throughout your path through life. Because if you don't have access to good healthcare, then that's really what you have to do. And I think that that's important to have in the conversation too, because herbalism is for everyone. Like, it's really, I think that's sometimes is why people can have a bit of a aversion to it at first, as well as
Hmm.
this feeling of like it's a little bit rough around the edges, but that's also its charm and its appeal because it's so eternal.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were talking, it made me think of the work of Gabor Mate, like one of the books that I came across that really made me stop and think about everything that was going on in my life was When the Body Says No. So it makes me think of all of these things that we're experiencing that there's symptomology for, but there's no cures for, if you will. And so I'm imagining that in your work, people are walking in with symptoms, but there's all of these underlying stressors that are really driving, because that's his thesis in that book, is that it's the cost of hidden stress, right? And that's what's showing up in our bodies. And so I'm imagining that you're supporting with the herbs and also encountering those things that are underneath the symptoms.
Yes, that's such a good insight. Absolutely. And Gabor Mate is brilliant. He's got some really interesting contributions that he's made to sort of the health and wellness field that I
Not
really
everybody
enjoy.
loves them, though. Not
No,
everybody
he's
loves
got
them.
some stuff that's a little spicy. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. But I do think just sort of the core of what you're saying, which is the idea of hidden stress is detrimental to the body. I think we totally have the science to back that now. We know that high cortisol is terrible for your body. And at least once a day, or at least once a week, I should say, when I'm sitting with people, that is typically one of the prongs to the approach that I'm going to take is let's get you back into your body. Let's make sure that your stress levels, if you can't make a massive life change right now, like let's at least help your nervous system cope a little bit easier.
And so would I be right to say, based on what you said that herbalism is like folk medicine. And so I heard you say that that makes it more accessible. In what ways is it more accessible? Is it cost, or is it just the approach? Could you say more about that?
Yeah, totally. Maybe accessible isn't the right word now that I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Because I guess there is a fairly huge barrier to understanding. And I think that is also a thing that puts people off, is because it is a huge learning curve. Like learning the actions and the uses of the herbs, like it's like learning a different language. But if you have a plot of land or even a ditch that you really like and a bunch of seeds, or if you know where the nettle grows in Nanaimo in the spring, like there's your lymphatic tonic. Like you can go and wildcraft and really be connected to the land in that way and get sort of the therapeutic aspect of wild harvesting, which is its own thing. It's just plants are so amazing the way that they talk to us when we're in their environment. But also just like if you can get to the plants and you go to them humbly, like they will help you.
I love that. And also on the thread of the folk medicine piece, how is this going to play out in the future? Because I just feel like, as I've heard actually in the last week, people have been saying, as things intensify, we're going to have to come back to community. And there's things that are coming that we can't necessarily anticipate. And we're already seeing our systems struggling. So how does this play into the future in terms of how we might come back to this tradition of herbalism?
Man, that's such a good loaded question. Where to begin? I mean, I think the future is a pretty terrifying thing to look at. First of all, I think we're all kind of caught between the devil and the deep blue sea in terms of like either we're paying attention to what's happening in the world and stressed beyond belief because it's just insane, or we're in a bit of avoidance. Back to that piece of people losing faith in the systems. I think that's going to drive a lot of people with Neptune in Aries and Saturn in Aries happening next year. I think that's going to be a big driver for a lot of people to kind of say, okay, like this is a thing I'm just going to have to figure it out. Community care is a really big thing too. I find myself thinking quite often that people seek out consultations just to sit with someone who has a regulated nervous system.
Yeah.
And it's just as much about the plants as it is about that touchstone of another human being who's like breathing your air, you know?
And that's the element that's really missing in this system that is just, it's moving no matter. 4 years ago, I was living in the Okanagan and I had some chest pain, and it wasn't heart related, but I was like, oh, I should go get that checked out. And I walked into the hospital because I felt I had no other choice. And the moment I stepped into that, I was in that system, and it just works in a very mechanical way. It's like, this is the thing, go to this. And a lot of it is missing that. At least my experience of it was that it's really missing that human connection, so that you're pointing to. And when we talk about the nervous system, one of the main principles, as you just stated, is co-regulation. It's like when we are with a regulated nervous system, we just naturally regulate. And so that is a huge part of healing, to be
It's
able to have
so
that
big.
experience. And you're making me think of this experience I had years ago when I was working in a wellness center as support staff, and someone was having a panic attack. And I went and sat with this person, and they just sort of slowed down a bit, and they looked at me and they said, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "What's wrong with me? Like, I'm the one supporting you. Like, there's nothing wrong with me," in my head. And then I was like, "What's wrong with me?" I said, "You're used to being supported by people who are anxious as they support you." And so what he was saying was, "Oh, I've never experienced what it's like to sit with a regulated nervous system. And I'm getting that experience now, and it's different. So there's something wrong with you." And it was like, for me, it was a huge gift as well to hear that. For him, actually, he just stopped seeking me out and sought out other people to sit with him that weren't regulated. It was quite interesting, because that
That's
was what
interesting.
actually he was used to feeling, right?
Oh, totally.
So, yeah.
That is wild. It is an interesting thing to kind of think about, just the different ways that like we can often, I think, seek out relationships and like even caretakers who are like
Mhm.
heightened.
Right.
I'll never forget when I was in herb school. One of my favorite things about being in herb school was I'd learn a new herb and then everyone in my life had to try it because,
Okay.
like, this is my new best friend. I had just learned a herb called shatavari, and I really love teaching on this herb because it's so yin-y and so
Mm.
down-regulating. And, like, holy smokes, this plant will just bring you right into the present moment and, like, you'll be in the void. And I gave it to one of my friends at the time, and she said, "It's really disorienting being this calm."
Right.
I was like, yeah, it is.
Right. I heard a speaker recently talking about homeostasis, and chaos can be our homeostasis. We can be used to that as a norm. So, yeah, and I want to double back. I wasn't intending to make fun of anybody. It's just laughing about my own experience of that, and how what we need can be so far out of our radar. And then when we have it, it's like, oh, it's so nice to have that experience of someone. Back to what you actually said, was someone's actually listening to me, and somebody's with me, and somebody is pacing what I'm trying to say and understanding it, rather than just giving me what they think I need.
And that's
So
just it. Yeah.
so is there anything about what you do that maybe I haven't asked about that you'd like to speak about the work that you do? There's other
Mm,
things you do as well. You give readings, right?
I do, yes. I read the tarot and I'm psychic and have some like mediumistic things that go on in my sessions with people. Yeah, that's a really big part of my daily life as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not an unusual thing these days for people
Nope.
to read tarot, but it's such a beautiful language to speak and a really fun way to connect with people. I would say, even to just tie back into what we were saying about sitting with someone who has like a permission slip for you to explore a different way of being in your body. I think a really important part of herbalism to me is that it's a really good way to introduce energies into your system that you have very little familiarity with. I think particularly for people who might lean like attachment styles might be a little bit more insecure, and connecting with another human being may not feel terribly
Uh-huh.
safe. A plant is a very, very nice way to start with introducing that energy into your body and helping you to get curious about what might be happening for yourself.
Uh-huh.
With that too, there's a lot of things that I think the crossover with that and then into more of the magical aspect of what I do is, at its core, witchcraft is really just understanding how energy works and understanding how to dance with it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes so much sense. Like, when you go into the forest, there's nothing but presence. I don't even know if I can articulate what I just felt about what you just said, but it makes so much sense. It's like you're bringing the medicine of the forest into your body, and perhaps you've never felt that before. And the plant is just doing what it always does. So it's not necessarily magic. It's just the medicine is doing what it's always done.
That's such a good way to put it. Totally.
It's fascinating. Hmm. So if this feels like a good place to pause, and I just want to close with the question that I always ask, which is, what would you say to someone in order to support them to bring the sacred into their life? What's one thing that they could do to bring the sacred into their everyday?
I love this question. So I would say simply because I'm preparing to teach on the lungs, so I'm a little bit obsessed at the moment. But there's a relationship to the divine that happens when we're able to experience awe. So I would say, sort of in a really practical way, to give oneself permission to value beauty more, to be really present with the experience of like a sunrise or a sunset or the ocean, which we're so fortunate to have like incredible access to here in Nanaimo, or being with a tree or the stillness of the forest, like you were saying, and to be totally surrendered to that moment. That I think is beautiful. And the neuroscience backs it up, which also really helps. But it's a really important way, I think, for a lot of people to give themselves permission to experience the sacred, and also because it allows us to remember the sacredness that is within ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. I love that reflection. I think it's really helpful. And for people who would want to stay connected with you, how might they find you?
Great question. Best way to get in touch with me is through social media. So my handles are at Marked by a Witch on TikTok and Instagram, or email me at markedbyawitch. If you're in Nanaimo, I am at Lobelia's Lair Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and the occasional Wednesday sprinkled in there.
Okay.
And I always have tea going, so feel free to swing by so we can have a little cuppa.
Excellent. And we'll put all those links in our show notes at the bottom. So great to have this conversation. I really enjoyed the pace and the reflections and the depth to which you were contemplating every question and your answers and the places it went. So I feel like there was an energy to this conversation that was really nourishing and supportive. And I just really appreciate all that you brought to this conversation.
Thank you for that reflection. It's been really lovely connecting with you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us on Sacred Sundays. I hope something in today's offering spoke to your spirit, stirred something true, or simply gave you a moment to breathe. If this conversation resonated, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, or share the podcast. It truly helps this work reach the people who are meant to find it. And if you'd like to explore more of my work or connect with me directly, you can visit rosstaylor.com, and that is Taylor with ER.com. Until next time, may your day be slow and sacred.